There's a lot in the pieces. I think that's the other thing that's different about my work. I take this material, which oftentimes is used in a sort of a simple way to do a chasing pattern that somehow, our brains find attractive, and we want to look at that, but then add more sophistication to the sequencing and, a lot more material. So I think that's what's surprising to a viewer is how the pieces continue to evolve, and there's no beginning or middle or end to my pieces. They're randomly selected sequences, so you never know what's coming next. So it's always, it stays very fresh. Yes, Big Bang is it's a 5-foot diameter light sculpture that has 1,600 colored LEDs in it. They're all individually controllable and can each be 16 million different colors, so there's a tremendous range that it has. But what distinguishes that piece is a new piece of software that we created to distribute points. So it's not a regular arrangement in the way some of my other pieces are radial pieces, and they're fairly straightforward. It still has an order to it, but it's not as specific as some of the previous work I was doing. Coming out to Burning Man in 1994 for the first time, and was amazed and surprised, and have been coming out every year since. But 3 years into it, in '97, I created a light sculpture to find my way home at night, because it was very difficult in the early days to find your way. It wasn't as populated as it is now. So that got me started in working with light and sequencing, and that was kind of a big turning point in my artwork. I use a lot of technology in my work. I couldn't make it without code and software, and there's a lot of technical things behind the scenes that I'm not really so interested in. So all that's embedded in the pieces, and what you see is the visual manifestation of the code and the programming. All my work is based on rules and underlying structures, so simple things. But I'm interested in the idea of complexity and emergent behavior. So I set up a framework and then let things happen within that framework. So it's not something that I know in advance. There's a lot of randomness and a lot of discovery in my process. So that's one way that mathematics is involved. There are other pieces where I'm more literally working with things like Newton's laws, which govern acceleration, velocity. Those aren't I'm not a physicist, but I'm able to use those parameters in my software to generate sequences. So to use these rules and formulas in a way that is really treating it as an art material. The works have is a lot of personality. Each work has its own feeling, its own tempo, and they all have a feeling of somehow being alive. So it's all cold hard numbers in the end, but somehow that feels lifelike, and we see things that we know in nature, like the way water might move or the sky, or all these things that we know, but it's been boiled down into these into the software, and then these are representations of those things. So some kind of connection to code in a way that feels very much like it's part of us, and we see ourselves in it, and they become mirrors. The pieces that you see here are more scaled to a gallery in a museum. I like to work smaller, handheld scale. I also like working much larger, so I do pieces in museums, like at the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and really now around the world, which is very exciting. But taking all the things I learned out at Burning Man about community and generosity and sharing have become part of the work, and I'm excited to see that go out into the world and for other people to connect to that same spirit.